welcome to Reality Tea Times 2, the podcast where we discuss all the trash reality TV we love to hate. I'm Tanika, and today we are going to be discussing Married at First Sight. So we're going to have some, recording notes that I'm going to mention about this episode because, like I said, I am getting kind of sick and tired of talking about these people. But we will talk about that very soon. So, before we do though, we have some hot goss that I'm going to talk about. So, first and foremost, I don't have a lot of information on this yet, but it appears that Colt and Vanessa may no longer be together. And again, like I said, I don't have a lot of information, but she did post on her Instagram. She was doing a Q&A on her Instagram, and one of the questions that were asked was, please don't tell me that the rumors are true and Colt cheated on you. And she responded with thanks, but no, I left him over a month ago. And someone else asked her what happened with your marriage to Colt, and she responded with, I wasn't in love anymore. So it does appear like they are no longer together. So guess maybe we'll get more information on that. I don't know, but maybe Colt is headed to his second divorce. But that is that. With that information, let's move on to the next thing. Now, though, this is Love is Blind related. However, this is pertaining to the court case that has been brought up against them by Renee Posh. So, Love is Blind production company Delirium TV scored a legal victory in the lawsuit filed by Renee. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Bruce G. Iwasaki denied a request for Posh and her lawyers, Brian Friedman and Mark Georgios, I believe, to avoid arbitration in the lawsuit, according to a press release from the production company. In the ruling, Judge Iwasaki noted that Ms. Posh and her lawyers engaged in heated rhetoric, but had absolutely no evidence that participating in arbitration, as required under Posh's agreement with Delirium, would cause her harm, per the press release. Judge Iwasaki also noted the court had grave doubts about Posh's request to avoid arbitration and ruled that she must defend Delirium's claims in arbitration and, should she choose to continue to pursue them, litigate her claims against Delirium and Netflix in arbitration. Delirium's attorneys, Larry Iser and Alan Sikratov of Kinsella, Hawley, Iser, Kump, Stein-Spur, I believe, LLP, shared a statement reacting to the ruling. They said, quote, "We are very pleased with the results of today's hearing, which confirms that Delirium acted properly in filing its arbitration against Ms. Posh in response to her violations of her confidentiality and publicity obligations. Arbitration is the procedure that is spelled out in the agreement Ms. Posh signed when she applied to participate in Love is Blind. But rather than defend against Delirium's claims in arbitration, Ms. Posh and her lawyers chose to file a headline-grabbing complaint in court against Delirium and Netflix with a morass of arguments challenging the enforceability of the agreement that she had signed." The statement then concludes, Ms. Posh and her lawyers twice sought unsuccessfully to enjoin Delirium from pursuing its arbitration against Ms. Posh, and also sought unsuccessfully to enjoin all of Delirium and Netflix's employment and participant agreements. The press release also states that Ms. Posh was asked to stop her unauthorized interviews and promptly mediate the dispute, and she was repeatedly warned by production personnel as well as by Delirium's lawyers that her continued breaches of the participant agreement would result in Delirium filing arbitration. So if true, she has completely screwed herself. After speaking out about her time on the show, Netflix and Delirium TV claimed Posh violated her NDA and sought $4 million. However, Posh believed the NDA is illegal and unenforceable, which That's not how NDAs work, but anyways. And she filed the lawsuit in hopes of clearing herself from all forms of liability. In the complaint, Posh, a veteran from Austin, Texas, claimed she was, quote, led to believe the participants were selected based on compatibility and marriage potential and screened with background checks and psychological examinations after being approached by a casting representative through Instagram, which is true. They definitely do that. They do. But some people can make it past those things. It's just how life works. Anyways, production insisted that all participants had been vetted and were marriage material. Once inside the pods, though, Posh said she hit it off with Wall, who was her fiance, who was also the one who said, if I had a daughter, I'd want what's his face, JP, to be her husband. Like, that's that guy. Who she later found out had lied about almost everything, according to the complaint. Per the complaint, Wall was allegedly unemployed with a negative balance in his bank account. He homeless, violent, estranged from his family, and actively addicted to drugs and alcohol at the time of filming. Whoa. Wall regularly berated Posh, stole from the set or places they visited. I mean, everyone does that, come on. And solicited others to buy painkillers for him. Wall was emotionally abusive on and off camera, lied malignantly, and heavily abused drugs and alcohol. Posh also claimed in the complaint that production was well aware of Wall's mental instability, with a camera operator, as we know, quitting in Mexico after being physically threatened by him. In Houston, production staff warned Posh to ensure Wall had no access to firearms or other weapons because they were concerned he would hurt himself, her, or others. So that's an interesting statement. Posh stated in the complaint that she became utterly terrified to be around him and made her misgivings clear to production. Despite that, the vet alleged she was forced to spend long stretches of time alone with him and was told she would subject herself to legal action if she were to discontinue her participation in the program. This sounds so gross. Or otherwise refuse move forward with the engagement. After ending her relationship with Wall once filming Wrapped, Posh learned their storyline would not be featured on the show, as we know. She then began making some limited public remarks about her distressing time on the show. In the wake of her comments, Delirium initiated arbitration against Posh for purportedly violating her unlawful non-disclosure agreement, according to the complaint. The company is now seeking $4 million for the violation after Posh only made $8,000 from her appearances. In the wake of her comments, Delirium initiated arbitration against Posh for... Oh, I read that already. So that's basically it with that information on the lawsuit. So that's where they're at. Any other updates I have on it, I will keep you informed. But let's move on to the next piece of hot goss. Paige Banks, y'all, is a mom. Now, if you don't know who Paige is, she was on Married at First Sight, who appeared on season 12 of the hit reality series. She welcomed her first baby with her boyfriend, Justin. If you remember, I did announce that she was pregnant. Paige's daughter's name is Nova Ray Banks Williams, and she was born on Monday, February 26th at 6:46 p.m. She says, Nova, what a blessing you are. The past 10 months have been a journey, watching and feeling you grow in my tummy, and we are so grateful you are finally here. Nova enjoys snuggles with mom and dad, listening to oldies, and long naps during the day to keep mom and dad up at night. She was named Nova, which means a bright star, because she brings so much light to our lives, and Ray, because she makes our world go round just like a ray of sunshine, which is so sweet. So I do have pictures of mom, dad, and baby, and I will, of course, be posting those to our socials. But that is it for the hot goss. we're going to move into Married at First Sight. But before I do, I'm just going to say, just so you know, I'm going to be going in order of the show at this point. And what's going to basically happen, I'm going to be kind of running through the other now divorced couples, but I'm not going to be focus heavily on them at this point. Just some key things that can happen throughout that we can maybe find interesting here. And then obviously kind of more focus on Chloe and Michael, but even that, like, because we're just kind of hearing the same thing over and over again with them too. We're kind of starting to die down with the recaps of the show because enough's enough, y'all. We're on episode 22. So that's basically how this is gonna go. So it's probably gonna be a fairly short episode, but let's get into it. Married at First Sight, season 17, episode 22, Doubts, Dilemmas, and Drag. So we see Chloe and Emily meeting up. Chloe kind of just mentions to her here that, they did have a meeting with Dr. Pia, for which that didn't go well, as we kind of know. And she kind of explains like what she said about being authentic and everything. And Emily says, she is an intense person, but I think if she wants you to open up more about certain things, then I think you need to talk to Michael about, living together if that's what needs to be done, which I definitely understand. That maybe, that is the push in the direction to have these conversations and to be authentic in these conversations. But the fact that Dr. Pia still called her inauthentic bothers me, and she wasn't saying it to me. So I personally don't like it. We then see Claire talking about calling Cam on his birthday or texting him on his birthday and kind of saying how he ignored her text and blah, blah, blah. And she kind of taking the road of, not focusing on this anymore. There's nothing more that she can do about it. And I'm just like, why are we still focused on this though? Y'all are not together and haven't been together for most of this time. So I'm over it, like I've said at this point. She does ultimately say later on though that Cam did message her back to say thank you, but that's about as far as it goes. I'm over at this point with these people. We better close out at this point with the next episode. I hope we do. Next, Becca is still missing Austin. Becca talks to her mom about everything that kind of went down. And she says, like, she's questioning her decision. Maybe I gave up too quick and all of this. And her mom basically says, like, there needs to be trust in a marriage and obviously in a relationship in general. She says something is not going how it should. That is where the breakdown kind of starts to happen. And that is exactly how it went down with them. And Becca says now, maybe my standards are too high. Like, she's still kind of questioning herself. She's like, am I doing something wrong with myself? Maybe that's why there's this breakdown. And she's like, can I find someone who's truthful and emotionally intelligent? No. But, she's like, I gotta let him go to find the right person so he can find the right person for him. And the thing that I find with Becca is this weird, like, 1 minute I miss him, 1 minute we gotta let him go. 1 minute I wonder if I didn't give him enough of a chance, but then I gotta let him go. It's but whoever she speaks to and whoever tells her what they tell her, she falls between the two. Listen, if you want to give him another chance, give him another chance. If you don't want to give him another chance, then don't give him another chance. Stop doing this back and forth nonsense. You can mourn your relationship, but not do this back and forth thing that she keeps doing. Like, it's beginning to be a little annoying. But anyways, we then see Lauren is with her friend. And she kind of says again, there is no relationship between her and Orion. Again, another person who kind of does this back and forth thing, and it's beginning to be too much. She kind of says Orion is confused. One minute he wants the friendship, but then the next there'll be, no consistency with him actually like trying to have this friendship with her. Like, ugh. Anyways, she says, you can like check in with me, talk to me, vent to me if you want to, but there's not going to be a friendship. Well, personally, I feel like if you're going to have a friendship with somebody, that's when you allow them to be able to come and talk to you or vent to you or whatever. If you're not going to have a friendship with a person, then you're not going to do those things. Like, again, I'm just very confused by her in this. Um, he's disappointed because we're kind of doing a back and forth between Lauren and him. He's disappointed by everything, so but it is what it is. She said that when she sent the text to him to tell him that she kind of made us want to be friends with him at this point, he responded back with, okay, I have your message. I need to process this. But give me time to respond back to you. And he never did. So yeah. And he says to he was with Brennan, he says to Brennan, like, he's still trying to process everything, but he just doesn't know what to say to her, which could be very well the truth. But like, don't sit around waiting for a response from him. Let it go. Like Elsa says, let it go. So she does also say that she has gone on 2 dates. Both went well. Apparently the one date that she went on was very attentive. She had some car issues and he stuck by her, made sure she was fine, made sure she had what she needed, and all was good there. So that's great. They did the other one went well too, so that's great. We very quickly see Emily talking to a coworker of hers, and we find out that she's going to be going to Hawaii through work, and then they're going to be going to Vietnam afterwards. This is going to be in a week or so. So we're almost done. So now we're with Chloe and Michael. We're 7 days from decision day. And this is kind of following the conversation with Dr. Pia. She mentions to Michael that she's ready to talk about it. And kind of right off the bat, we kind of just get off our chest here. Listen, the one thing about your mom not knowing about the marriage, it's fine. I have no issues with that. Why tell her something if it doesn't work out? Like, they're on the same page with not telling his mom right now. But the one thing I will give Dr. Pia is we are communicating for sure, but I do think we need to look at living together after decision day. He says ultimately he's okay in them looking in hindsight, but he's like, we got a million pets here, an apartment's not going to allow a million pets in it, in one unit. Clearly it is possible because they have their million pets in this unit currently, and we have seen in past seasons where someone has multiple pets exceeding the amount that they could have in the home, and they could not have the dogs there. So clearly it's possible to have an apartment building allow more than one pet, or more than one, or more than two, or whatever. So maybe I just have to kind of look for that. Yes, it's going to be difficult. But maybe they can look for that, so yeah, he kind of brings that up, and he says, we're not really ready to buy a house. They've discussed that before. But he said he would be, open to looking as long as they're not compromising on what they would want ultimately in a home, which is obviously fair. You don't want to compromise. But yeah, at least if they're trying to look for a place, that is a start. So I wrote the next scene here that I do talk about that Michael thinks it's a good idea to talk to Brennan about, or ask him for advice on how to go about things with a marriage when he couldn't even be a proper husband himself to Emily. So that's a stupid choice. Anyway, We're now 5 days before decision day, and we're looking at a house now. This house is a 3-bed, 2-bath home. Michael does not consider this house modern, I guess, for some reason, which I thought it looks pretty modern to me, but what do I know? But it does have a huge closet, so that is a plus. It's big enough for him, not for Chloe. The backyard is also really big. She's like, maybe we could start a sanctuary here. But this house is actually really nice. But how much is this house? How much is it to rent? It's $4,800 a month. They are currently paying where they are right now $4,300 a month. So it would be an additional $500, which, I mean, if you work out those numbers, but amongst the both of you, it's not impossible. So I think if they can talk about it, then that's you're a step closer. He says ultimately that he is excited to move in with her, but it just doesn't feel realistic to do it right now. He asks, like, what if it takes us 6, 7, 8 months to find a place? Like, is that going to be okay with you? And she feels it would be unrealistic and she wouldn't like having to wait for them to live with each other. She says it would be a bummer. So she kind of says they both really need to look at what their future is going to look like with each other past decision day. So now we see the ladies going to a drag show. The guys are going to make bottle openers. Boring. Chloe just wanted to take a break and have fun, and nothing is more fun than going to a drag show. So that's what they do. And these drag queens were doing the damn thing. I'm not going to really talk about too much about the conversations that each person has because, again, it's just reiterating the same thing that we've talked about in length at this point. But we're going to skip over to the next scene, which I think is a pretty big one. Michael wakes up Chloe. I think it is pretty early though, so they're just taking a nap. It's just all the animals with her, and he just wanted to make sure they had their night together, they're paying attention to each other. He wants to talk. Nothing scary, he says. That's a fucking lie. He said, I just want to kind of just express like how he's feeling. Now may be appropriate time to talk about the feelings, so we're going to do it. And he says, if we do, decide to stay married, then the thing that has been hard is them, currently being on the same page with each other. But he says, like, he says kind of say to her, like, for whatever reason, though, it has been really draining. He uses the word draining for him to talk about the future with her. What? I don't like it. She says, okay, let's kind of take this back here. And do you think you are in this place? Like, are you in a place to stay married? And he says, honestly, I am starting to question this marriage. Jesus, he came in here saying this wasn't going to be scary. He lied. So she says, I need to make sure I am hearing you clearly. She says, it feels like me maybe pushing you to move in right away with each other might have planted those fears and those seeds of doubt. And she says, I'm now feeling emotional. And she says she will not allow them to give up this quickly in this marriage. And she's asked him to not make any decision until decision day. So here's what I'm going to say. I do think her pushing him ultimately Dr. Pia pushing her to push him into this conversation of living together quickly. But you guys are married. This is what you signed up for. You potentially could have been living together after this. Why wouldn't you want to push yourself into living with each other right away? And the fact that this woman is saying, I want to make sure we're living with each other, that, it may not happen right away, but I would like for it to happen in a decent amount of time. Why can't you take that and be like, okay, like she really is in this? Instead of the fear aspect driving you to potentially say no at the decision day. I'm so confused by this and his response. And I thought he really wanted this marriage, but I am now starting to question whether or not he actually wanted this marriage. Or at least maybe questioning if he wants this marriage with her. And I'm not comfy in this. I mean, if they had discussed that this is what they wanted to do, and they have discussed this in length, which they seem to have done, I understand Dr. Pia stepping in and trying to make sure that everyone is being, good. But her decision to use the word inauthentic, you don't know the effect that's going to have on somebody. Because I feel like Chloe has been accused of not being authentic in the past. And that creates a trigger response in her brain. So I blame her. I blame her for all of this. I'm not saying that necessarily would have said yes at decision day, but the seeds of doubt that's being planted in him, I blame Dr. Pia for it. Like, what the fuck were you thinking? And although I can respect Chloe saying do not make a decision until decision day, if Michael has already made a decision to say no, then there's nothing that's going to change him from going back and deciding otherwise, unless there's some sort of miracle that happens. So I don't know what's going to happen with these two. I really don't. Guess we'll find out soon though. But that is it for Married at First Sight. Like I said, no, this was a quicker episode. It's because I'm tired of talking about these people. So next time on, the couples are going to be seeing each other for the first time after decision day. Well, the divorced couples are going to be seeing each other for the first time after decision day. And decision day is coming up for Chloe and Michael. And let me tell you guys, Pastor Kel's face at one point in this scares the living shit out of me. But yeah, that is it for Married at First Sight. What else I want to mention here too, because you've already gotten a bonus episode for my other podcast, Next Take Podcast. I do want to talk about an episode that I just did with obviously my co-host, and we also had a guest on named Tristan Stewart Robertson, who has a podcast called Murder Without End, which was a really great podcast that I flew by last week. And we just had him on one of our episodes that we just did, and he's going to be on future ones as well. And you might get a bonus episode of that in April. And it was a really great episode that we recorded. We actually just recorded it before me recording this one. It was a really great episode. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. I will maybe include it in a show note once it's released, because you're getting this before that releases. But I would definitely hop over to Next Take Podcast this week. It should be out either Wednesday or Thursday of this week. Definitely go take a listen to that episode. It was a really great episode, a very insightful episode. We are talking serial killers, true crime, the obsession with true crime. It was a really great episode. I had a lot of fun doing it. So plugging it. I'm not giving you a sneak peek of it, but I'm plugging it. And I think you guys should go over there and listen to it once it's released. I will definitely double check. Once it's released, I will let you know on that episode, and I will plug it in the show notes for that episode so you can go take a listen to it, because I think it's gonna be a really great episode. I haven't edited it yet, but I think it's going to be great. So that is it for Married at First Sight for this week. So if you like what you heard, please rate, review the podcast on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, don't forget that you can also share us with everyone in your life if you really love this. And I do want to read those reviews. I'm definitely getting 5-star ratings, but I want to read those reviews. So send me those reviews and I will read those 4 and 5-star reviews on the podcast. Also, we're on every one of your favorite podcast apps. Every one of them, including you can find us on YouTube at Reality Tea Times 2. If you want to connect with us, you can do so by going to either Facebook or Instagram at Reality Tea Times 2. You can also find us on Twitter, TikTok, Reddit at Reality Tea Times 2 Pod. We also have our email, which is at realityteatimes2 at hotmail.com. Definitely want to hear from you guys. And we also have our new website where you can listen to all of these episodes. You can review the podcast on there as well. You can connect with me in any way, all the stuff. It's all there, and you can find me there at www.realityteatimes2, all spelled out, .podpage.io. It's there. And don't forget, I also have my other podcast with my friend Mikkel, Next Take Podcast, where we talk about all kinds of different topics. But you can find us on any of your favorite podcast apps over there as well. Or you can also go to YouTube, and you go to Next Take Podcast, as well as our website, which is solo.to/Next Take Podcast. So yeah, there's that, and that's basically that. And again, don't forget, if all of this information is overwhelming, we do have all of the links, everything in our show notes. But that is it for now, guys. Thanks. Bye.